Greetings and salutations. Today we will be covering the mystery of the boy in the box. On February 25th, 1957, a badly beaten body of a young boy whose death was caused from the injuries he sustained was found in the Fox Chase neighborhood of Philadelphia. Susquehanna Road was a relatively underpopulated part of Fox Chase in the area of northern Philadelphia. It linked Pine Road and Bree Road. This area was sparsely wooded, however, foliage was not dense enough to block visibility. The preceding area was made up primarily of an open field with short plant growth. However, despite this land being relatively unobstructed, homes were not to be found in this area of the Susquehanna Road proper. However, nearby, a religious enclave ran a school for wayward girls. The religious enclave went by the name of the Sisters of the Good Shepherd. In this area, there was also a driveway which provided access to a large multi-floor facility. Said facility stood almost directly across the street from the entrance of the Good Shepherd's school. There was also a wooded area covered by a rather dense amount of foliage. This area was often used as an impromptu dump by locals. This was where the body would be found, unceremoniously left, only to be found on the tail end of February 1957. The body was that of an unidentified Caucasian male whose age was estimated to be between 4 and 6 years old. The nude body was wrapped in a cheap flannel blanket and was found laying face up inside a large cardboard box, just a few feet from the edges of the Susquehanna Road. The body, unlike the surrounding area, was clean and dry. The boy was found to have his arms neatly folded across his stomach. The child was found to be 40.5 inches tall and to weigh 30 pounds. He had blue eyes and a pallid skin tone. His hair was described to be somewhere between a light and a medium brown to a blonde color. His hair seemed to have been cut rather recently and very close to the head in a rather crude yet choppy manner. I believe this could have potentially been done to conceal the child's identity. Small clumps of cut hair clung to his entire body, suggesting somebody had groomed him recently while he was unclothed, while he was alive, or possibly shortly after death. The body also showed visible signs of malnourishment. The child's body was in an appalling state. It was marred with a litany of bruises amongst other injuries. However, the majority of them were concentrated to his head and face. His injuries seemed to have been inflicted around the same time. The medical examiner was able to estimate that the boy had died sometime within the last week, or as far back as 2 weeks prior to him being discovered. One of the more notable things about the body were 7 scars, some of which were believed to have been caused by surgery. Some of the surgical scars were on his chest and groin, and seemed to have healed to the point that only hairline traces could be seen. There were also scars like the cut-down scar on the boy's ankle, the round irregular scar on his left elbow, and the 1.5-inch scar on his leftmost side of his chest. And while there were no vaccination scars, something that was quite common back in the day, his chin was marred by an L-shaped scar, 1/4 of an inch long in each direction. It is also notable that his ribs showed through his chest, indicating how bad the malnourishment was. It was further evidenced by studying his bones, which showed that his growth had been stunted. He also had a full set of baby teeth. Examination of the boy's gastrointestinal tract indicated that he had not eaten for at least 2 to 3 hours before his death. It should be noted that the child's esophagus also showed signs that he had thrown up just prior to his death, despite not having eaten 2 to 3 hours prior to his death. His feet were also shown to have some particular amount of wrinkling, or washwoman's effect. This suggests that his body had been waterlogged prior to his death. Further testing showed that the boy's left eye had signs of fluorescent blue coloration, suggesting that a specific diagnostic dye had been applied, in concentrations pointing towards the treatment of a long-standing eye ailment. X-rays of the boy's body also showed no signs of bone fractures. The large cardboard box he had been found in measured 15 by 19 by 35 and had been marked fragile, due to it having previously contained a baby's bassinet from JCPenney. The bassinet retailed for about $7.50 and was sold between December 3rd, 1956 and February 16th, 1957. The store which sold it was located in Upper Darby, Pennsylvania. Sadly, this information would produce few, if any, leads, due to JCPenney at the time having a cash-only policy, or at least this store, meaning that no record could be used to identify the purchaser of the bassinet. However, upon the authorities' request, all but one of the bassinet and their boxes would be accounted for. The box itself was in remarkably good condition, the inside of the box, that is. However, the outside was damp and slightly weathered. The inside of the box led to some important evidence. It had traces of a white coloring, meaning the specific specific color of the bassinet was white, the box itself would be sent to the FBI for testing. However, no fingerprints were found. During the autopsy, blood along with other bodily fluids, hair, along with tissue samples were taken for toxicology analysis. It would only be then that a mysterious dark brown residue coating the boy's esophagus was found. However, much like the case, it could not be directly identified. However, the presence of the brown substance was consistent with vomiting before death. Hair strands found clinging to the body were sent to the FBI lab for testing. However, it ended up just being some of the boy's own hair. One of the individuals very involved in the case was one William H. Kelly, who systematically searched area hospitals, comparing the victim's footprint to hospital nursery records. Thousands of prints were searched in Philadelphia, Delaware, Bucks, and Montgomery County. Unfortunately, it was all for naught. They were unable to identify the boy through this method. Mr. Kelly and William McNasby of the crime lab also searched the files of U.S. Immigrations and Naturalization Services on their own time. They checked 11,200 passport photos on the theory that the unknown boy might have been an immigrant. Sadly, despite extensive searching, no records whatsoever matching the boy were ever found. Yet another area of focus of the investigation was the plaid blanket the boy had been found in, which was clean. The flannel blanket that was used to cover the boy was awash with greens, browns, and whites. It appeared that the blanket might have been homemade or made on a home sewing machine. It also seemed to have been cut in half. Once taken to the Philadelphia Textile Institute, the blanket point of origin was tracked down to either Beacon Mills, Sawana, North Carolina, or the Esmond Mills at Gainesby, Quebec, Canada. Unfortunately, this information was not of much use, due to thousands of examples of this blanket having been sold throughout North America. Another path of investigation that was followed was one based on finding a men's blue corduroy hat less than 20 feet from where the body had been discovered. There was a clear pathway from the thickets near the body to where the box and the hat had been found. Much like the box, the FBI lab analysis did not turn any fingerprints or anything on the hat itself. However, what they learned was the hat's proper manufacturer, the Robbins Bald Eagle Hat and Cap Company. This would lead to the police interviewing the owner of the company, who would tell them that the hat was made from a material used prior to May 1956. She said the man who had purchased the hat resembled the picture of the child she had seen in a police circular. He would go on to tell the detectives that the man was alone when he came in, wore working clothes, did not speak with a foreign accent, had blonde hair, and appeared to be somewhere in his late 20s. There was also a potential lead when a pair of black size 1 children's shoes were found near the body. These shoes were regarded to be in good condition, but inexpensive. The condition of the shoes was important due to the area around the shoes being rather muddy, while the shoes themselves were clean. One of the shoes was found on the same side of the road as the body, being around 50 feet from the body, north of it, and the other was found 10 feet south of the opposite side of the road. However, when detectives went to try the shoes on the body in the morgue, they were found to be way too large for him. But another strange discovery was that in the area where the boy was found, there was a blanket along with a dead cat wrapped in the man's gray sweater that were found lying together in a depression about a quarter-mile from where the boy's body was found. Lying on top of the cat was a blanket or a piece of it, and the crumpled brown sodden wrapping paper. The material of the blanket fragment was visually similar to both the blanket that was found in the boy's and the material that the blanket was made from. However, as it turns out, the blanket fragment was of no relation to the one found with the boy. At one point, Dr. Wilton M. Coggerman, professor of physical anthropology at Graduate School of Medicine, University of Pennsylvania, was called by the medical examiner's office to study the boy's body and its physical characteristics. Dr. Coggerman found the boy was to be 40 inches tall, giving him a height about age of 3 years and 8 months, but the boy's body weight itself was equivalent to the body weight of only about 2 years and 2 months old. This obviously suggested undernourishment or malnourishment. The bones confirmed this because x-rays showed scars of arrest of growth along the bones of his legs, and this, he reported to police, he may have been slowed enough in his growth, anywhere from between 6 months to a year in his growth process. Dr. Coggerman estimated that the boy had been in chronically ill health with accompanying malnourishment for about a year. He described the boy as having a long, narrow head, a high, narrow face, and a high, narrow nose that, to him, would tell him that he was somewhere from the northeastern Europe in ancestry, possibly Scandinavia, West Germany, or England, or even Scotland. DNA testing back in the 1950s was not what it is today. Little could be done with any DNA collected from a body. However, years later, this cold case would have new life breathed into it due to advancements in DNA testing. Unfortunately, by the time the body was exhumed once more, the remains were far too degraded to extract viable nuclear DNA. After several failed attempts, months, what viable tissue could be collected was sent to a lab in Europe, which successfully extracted mitochondrial DNA from the boy's teeth. It was quoted by some to be, This is the closest we have gotten." The victim's DNA profile was used to positively eliminate the possibility that he was Stephen Damon, a missing New York boy who was kidnapped in 1955. Detective Tom Augustine of the Philadelphia Police Department Homicide Division is one of the latest in the long line of investigators who have handled the case of the boy in the box. Augustine first became interested in the boy in the box case in 1957 when he was 11 years old. He had seen the boy's haunting image depicted on posters displayed throughout Philadelphia. At the time, young Tom Augustine had no idea that he would one day become a homicide detective and get the opportunity to investigate the case itself. Augustine was put in charge of the boy in the box case in 1998. Police Commissioner Thomas J. Gibbons would at one point order the student complement of the Police Academy to join in a search for clues on the identity of the young boy found in the box. This exhaustive 2-day search was conducted in a 12 square mile area in the northeast part of the city. The search would go far beyond the city limits though. Searchers were looking for anyone who might have known of a missing child of about 5 years old, and for any trace of clothing that might have been worn by the murdered boy. At the start of the investigation, it was believed that the boy in the box identity would be found out relatively quickly. However, that assumption would soon be dashed and proven false due to there being no missing child reports with a resemblance to the victim. This forced the investigators to shift gears. They would go on to broadcast information over police lines to reach out to child welfare and to other law enforcement groups. These efforts resulted in visitors traveling from multiple states away to attempt to identify the victim. Local media was also approached to aid in the investigation by printing out 400,000 flyers. These were distributed across the local area and were also included in gas and electric bills. An article which described the boy's scars was also printed in a journal's periodical. Eventually, the FBI was asked to help investigate the mystery of the deceased boy. The FBI was handed a compilation of all the evidence which had been gathered, so it could properly comb through the evidence of the investigation at the FBI's renowned crime lab. The FBI would go on to publish a report of the case, and it circulated it across the country. From here on out, we will be covering information and leads along with theories surrounding the case. One of the early leads was provided by Frederick J. Boness, a 26-year-old student at LaSalle College. He called the police shortly after 10 a.m. on the morning of February 26, 1957, and informed them that he had discovered a body of a small child the previous day. Benoit said he was driving along the Susquehanna Road, west of Verey Road, on Monday afternoon at 3:15 p.m. He would state that he had seen a rabbit jump into the underbrush, where he would give chase to the rabbit. He said he saw some muskrat traps and came upon a large box. Curious at what was inside of it, he looked. He saw what he thought could be possibly a doll or the body of a small child. Benoit decided not to report the incident at that time. Police subsequently learned that Benoit was of the habit of visiting Susquehanna Road to peep on the young woman at the Gabriel Shepherd School for Wayward Girls. This would explain why he was reluctant to go to the authorities. However, by the next morning, Benoit had reconsidered after hearing the radio reports about a missing New Jersey child. Benoit would go on to seek guidance from 2 LaSalle College faculty priests, who would advise him to reach out to the authorities immediately. Benoit was questioned extensively before being cleared of the charges after voluntarily submitting to a lie detector test, which cleared him of any suspicion. Another lead in the case was George Bormel, a Marine private first class, who told the police that he believed the unknown boy was his 8-year-old brother. Bormel, who had recently returned from overseas, said he was one of 18 children. The last time he had seen his family is when they had lived back in Philadelphia. He noted that at the time that he last saw his family, they were intent to move to the West Coast. However, that 2 of his younger brothers would stay with an older sibling who lived in the northeast section of the city. Detectives would eventually find the missing brother alive and well in California. Eventually, a woman who was only referred to as M to the public would come forward, and she would claim that the boy had been purchased by her abusive mother back when she was a child. She had been abusing him for years. M claimed that after the boy vomited his dinner of baked beans, her mother bashed his head against a wall as punishment. Then she attempted to bathe him, which was when the child died. The police initially followed the lead due to the wrinkled hands, which M noted had happened when her mother had given the boy a bath. This information had not been made public, thus adding some validity to her claim. Their belief in her claims was also reassured by her description being similar enough to the boy to be believed. She further encouraged the police by noting that her mother had cut the child's hair, which she had previously kept long, as to make him unidentifiable. Police would eventually classify this as a dead end due to her claims not matching neighbors' reports. Also, it was found out that the individual in question, M, had suffered from severe mental illness, and everyone she stated had seen the boy could not corroborate her claims in any way. Another potential lead in the case was Kenneth E. and Irene Adel Dudley, who were carnival workers, which were arrested and jailed in Lawrenceville, Virginia, in 1961 for causing the death of their 7-year-old daughter. Her death was caused by malnutrition and neglect, along with exposure. Under intense questioning, the Dudleys admitted that they had permitted 6 of their 10 children to die of malnutrition and neglect. To further this, they had stated that they had disposed of several bodies throughout the South, and including 2 dumped in a lake and another in an abandoned phosphate mine. Detectives conducted a thorough investigation to see if the Dudleys were the parents of the boy in the box. However, they would be quickly cleared of all charges. In the year 2004, Detective Tom Augustine was contacted by people in Florida who claimed that their mother was the unknown boy's birth parent. They submitted DNA samples to be tested at their own expense. The DNA samples were analyzed, however they did not match. When Detective Augustine contacted them and told them this, the people in Florida insisted that the DNA labs must have made a mistake, because they were absolutely certain that their mother was the boy's birth parent. Subsequently, they submitted their mother's DNA sample to be tested again, once again at their own expense. And once more, the DNA sample failed to match the unknown boy's own DNA. There were also theories surrounding the foster home, which was located approximately 1.5 miles from the site the boy was found. In 1960, Remington Bristol, an employee of the medical examiner's office following the case, decided to contact a New Jersey psychic in 1993. The psychic told them to look for a house that matched the foster home's description. When the psychic was brought to Philadelphia at the discovery site, she led Bristow directly to the foster home. Once they reached an estate sale at the foster home, Bristow discovered a bassinet similar to the ones sold at JCPenney. He also discovered blankets hanging from the clothesline that were similar to the ones which the boy's body had been wrapped in. Bristow believed that the boy had belonged to the stepdaughter of the man who headed the foster home, and he believed that they disposed of the body so that the stepdaughter would not be exposed as an unwed mother. Bristow theorized that the boy's death had been an accident. Despite the circumstantial evidence, the police were not able to find any true links between the boy in the box and the foster family. In 1998, the Philadelphia police lieutenant Tom Augustine and a group called the Vaux Society, or a group of retired policemen and profilers, interviewed the foster father and his stepdaughter, whom at the time he had married. From there, the foster home investigation was closed for good. After a masked night raid near Harsham, Pennsylvania in September 1957, 4 suspects were questioned about the murder of the unidentified boy. This was carried out by state Montgomery County and Philadelphia police. The raid was made as a result of confidential information from an unidentified woman. The exact location of the farm and the identities of the 6 prisoners living there were not disclosed. After questioning, the suspects were released. As a part of the initial search, clues spread from Barrington, Rhode Island, where the police learned about a young mother whose 6-year-old son had been reported missing since they left for Florida. On February 19, 1957, the mother of the Barrington boy was estranged from her husband. Her son was blonde and about the same height as the dead boy. However, her son apparently was at least 10 pounds heavier, if not more so, and he did not match the victim, yet again in more detailed description. This was yet another dead end. Similarities between the boy in the box and the mysterious homicide of a 5-year-old girl in New York City in August 1957 prompted the Philadelphia and New York police departments to launch a cooperative investigation to determine if both children could have been victimized by the same person. A link between the 2 crimes was never found, however. In late 1998, investigators learned that in 1958, an Illinois woman who'd read about the Philadelphia mystery in the Saturday Evening Post told the FBI agent she had called that the boy's mother was a loose woman who traveled a lot. Once the original report was located, William Fletcher tracked down the woman by phone, which she indicated that the boy he was asking about was now a man and very much alive. Where they looked, they're met with more dead ends. There was also the unidentified Munyak, Pennsylvania couple who told police detectives in 1957 that their boy might have been the boy in the box. Their 6-year-old son had gone missing around 7 months earlier when he was placed in an orphanage by the municipal court. The mother said the boy looks like him, while the father said he wasn't too sure. A team of detectives would eventually find the couple's child in a private orphanage in West Philadelphia. The boy had originally been buried in a potter's field. However, after the boy was exhumed in 1998, he was reburied in Ivy Hill Cemetery in Cedarbrook, Philadelphia. In a large plot was donated along with a tin coffin, a headstone, and a funeral service for the son of the man who had originally buried the boy in 1957. The grave has a large headstone bearing the words, "America's Unknown Child." City residents have kept the grave decorated with flowers and toys. As it stands now, we know disappointingly little about the case and are only left with theories. If you remained with me until the end, I thank you, and I do so hope you stay tuned for more content.